Good evening, everyone, and welcome to KLF Bhava Samvad. Today on KLF Bhava Samvad, we are going to have a session discussion on the book In the Footsteps of Rama, Travels with Ramayana, written by the eminent authors Shri Vikrant Pande and Shri Neelesh Kulkarni. To moderate the session, we have Shri Sanjeev Sanyal with us. Sanjeev Sanyal is an Indian economist and author. Currently, he is the principal economic advisor in the Ministry of Finance, Government of India. I would request our respected speakers for the evening to kindly begin with the session. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Namaskar to everyone. And let me begin by congratulating both Vikrant and Neelesh for this wonderful book. I'm putting it up in case those of you have joined, you want to know which book this is about. Well, this is the book we are talking about. So now, we will spend the next, say, 40 odd minutes chatting about the book so that, those of you who are listening in can get a sense of this. Let me see if I can also simultaneously retweet this so that in case you want to send this on to others, then you can do that as well. So first question, and you can basically choose which of you wants to answer this, but it's an obvious question. How did you come up with the idea of doing this trip and write about it? Or was it something backwards? You wanted to do the trip and then you came up with the idea of writing a book, or was it the other way around?
It just happened. I and Vikrant have been friends for 30 plus years. And all this while we've been traveling, our spouses and us, we've been traveling together a fair amount, going around places, having a great time. So this one time in Jaipur, when we were sitting in the hotel room and the spouses wanted to go shopping. So just to avoid going shopping with them, Vikrant said, I have something to discuss with you. So we sat back in the room, and that is where he broached the idea of this book. And how it came about was, we basically both of us had read Walking with Nanak. And we had the desire to replicate something like that, create something like that with a figure who was probably more of a all India figure, a figure who one figure who would probably be respected and understood all over India, Sri Lanka too. So Ram. But that particular day, I think Vikrant just asked me a question, said, "Do you know where Chitrakoot is?" So I kind of told him, "Yahan kahin hai map mein." And when I did that, he said, "Do you realize that this is about 500 square kilometers?" I mean, we realized that we didn't even know where Chitrakoot was. Specifically, we couldn't put a finger to it and say, confidently, it is here. So that is the day when I think Vikrant went around and told me that he said, "I've asked this of 98 other people, and all of them have not been able to pinpoint where Chitrakoot was. So shall we go there and find out?" And being good for a holiday, said, "Chalte hain yaar, dekhte hain kya hoga." So we kind of went there, chased the story, and when we actually went there, we didn't realize that it would turn out to be something so big that it would take up some 2 years of our life. But that's how it happened. And within a month of that Jaipur meeting, we were in Chitrakoot, we were chasing stories, we were talking to people, totally thrilled. When we came back from Chitrakoot, we knew we had a book with us. You want to add to this, Vikrant?
In fact, yeah, Vikrant.
Yeah, I think, more than Chitrakoot, in fact, all the 97 out of the 98 people I asked did not know where is Kishkinda. You mentioned that, Sanjeev, in your book about Hampi.
Yes.
And being from Bangalore, and everybody knows Hampi as a world archaeological site, but unfortunately, Kishkinda, people didn't know that it was next to Hampi. So that was another revelation, and we said we need to go to these places and actually discover stories. Everybody knows Ramayana through just Ramanand Sagar's television serial. But that's not the entire Ramayana. There are a lot of stories which are not known. There are a lot of myths which we have discovered as we went along. And we wanted to actually experience it firsthand so that, we get the real experience of what it means to be there.
So it may interest you to know that I had thought of doing this trip at some point myself.
Okay.
And in fact, have even got a contract to do this. But I will eventually write this. But now that you have done such a wonderful book, I'll have to wait for some more time to lapse. And then I will do it.
We are blessed you were not there before, Sanjeev. Had you been there before, this whole idea of our travel would have been defunct. So I'm so thankful to you for not acting on it
not
promptly.
at all. Not at all, because you see, this journey can be made every few years.
Yes.
Yes,
So
it
is a journey we have all been through as children, right? It's a journey every Indian goes through. So it's okay. I mean, by the way, there are other books who have done this journey. I don't know if you ever came across the book about the blue. It's called the journey of the blue skin god or something like that. I've read this many years ago.
Yes.
So it was a foreigner who had done this journey. Although he hadn't traced the journey, he had visited all the sites.
There is another foreigner who had started from Jaisalmer, where he heard the musical instrument called Ravan Hatta. That's a kind of sarangi kind of thing they play there. So he wanted to find out the link between Ravan and the instrument in Jaisalmer. So he actually went around almost all the Ramayana sites all over with the objective of trying to connect Ravan with Ravan Hatta. And he wrote a book on it. Okay. So that book is there.
So there are others who have done it.
The emphasis changes, yes. So many people have done it. Not only that, I have another take on it, which is that, Sanjeev, if I and Vikrant did the same journey again starting today, we would discover totally new things.
Yeah, well,
it's not going to be the same. Even for us, it's going to be different.
I, for one, didn't do the journey because I thought I shall do it after the temple has been built. So I have held back for that one important reason, because I thought I shall do it after the temple has been built. So anyway, now, few things. One, you can take it as a criticism or maybe it's a question. Why did you not include a map here?
It's a question.
That is an albatross we have to carry around our neck all our lives till such time as we are talking about the book. But I think there were some. We had talked to the publisher about it, and I think HarperCollins was. Yeah. HarperCollins was of the opinion that putting up a map would require a lot of clearances and all, which they didn't have the time to do in this time. That is the impression that we were getting.
No, that's utter rubbish. And anyway, even those regulations have been removed, because I was involved in removing those Survey of India regulations just in March.
Okay.
So
we didn't quite know this.
Now stop you from publishing anything.
Yeah, we have now told them that in the reprint, that is because the first print has already sold out. In the reprint that is coming out, we have suggested that they should put some kind of flyer inside it with the map, maybe a bookmark or a broader bookmark.
The rules allow you to do it. We have liberalized the geospatial and cartography sector. It was all over the newspaper back in 15th of March or something. Please have a look.
Right.
So they don't have a monopoly over this anyway. In any case, it's rather ridiculous not to have a map on something like this. But I think it would be quite a good addition to the map. Photographs may, oddly enough, however, destroy it. My own view. It will sort of date it in some way. So I think it's good that you didn't include photographs. But I think a map would sort of... Yes, you want to say something?
That again was something. Both these points were taken up simultaneously with the publisher, and we were very clear with that. We wanted HarperCollins to put in the pictures, but Udayan, who's our publisher, was very clear about this. Udayan said, "No, I want the words to do the talking. I want you to weave images through words so that people look at it and they are curious to go and see it rather than seeing the picture and saying we have seen this."
Yes, I think that was a good idea, but I think the maps, however, would be helpful. Now, question for Vikrant. There, somewhere in the beginning of the book, you guys go looking for Tamasa River. Now, it appears to me that you don't find it. Is that the case? Is it the case that you didn't even find a dry riverbed, or nobody could tell you where it was? Or I do remember that you then drove through some slushy area on the way back. Is it the case that may be the sort of remains of the river? Is that possible?
We did find a small stream which we kind of locally believed that it was the Tamasa River. We were actually trying to find the exact spot from where Ram, Sita, and Lakshman, along with Sumant, and the three of them, they crossed over so that they're outside the boundary of Ayodhya, and then they start moving towards Allahabad, Sringaverpur. And that spot, it took quite some time for us to find because nobody really was very sure of what that place was. But eventually we did find it, and there's a very small stream which we believe is the Tamasa River originally. And our journey begins.
Because
So our journey
I did
begins
some
from.
Google searching, not Mark. There is
Sorry?
there is a Kamsa River somewhere in Madhya Pradesh. I saw in Google, but there is nothing in the area that you seem to have visited.
Yes,
no, there is
they
a
did.
ghat also there. There is a ghat also on the Tamsa at the very point where they are supposed to have camp. So it is very much there. But like Vikrant said, it's a very narrow stream.
Okay, and from there, so what is the transport you're using through this? Is it that jeep, or did you take the jeep all the way through?
Yes, most of the times.
Most places we have used a vehicle to travel from one place to another. In different places, of course. So we did not do the journey in the chronological manner in which the events actually occurred. So in fact, our first visit was to
Okay.
Chitrakoot. So
Got it.
Sri Lanka was later. We came back to
So,
Ayodhya
okay.
again.
So that I understand this. So you didn't just go to Ayodhya and then get into a car and drive right through the whole thing.
No.
So why did you not do that? I mean, that would be the obvious way to do it.
No, we did this in pieces. We didn't do it at one stretch. I wonder if that is what is being asked. We did this over.
Yeah. So that's what I want to understand.
Yes, we started in September 2019 and we ended in March 2020.
Okay.
No, Sanjeev. So the question is, for example, from Chitrakoot to Nashik, Panchavati via Ramtek. Obviously, we didn't do the journey by car. So I just flew down to Nagpur. I went to Ramtek, and then from there I flew to Nashik. We did Panchavati. Then we came to Bangalore, and then took a train to Hampi. So it was covering actually 7 or 8 physical locations, not the journey per se, which is the complete 3,000
so that's
kilometers.
also what this thing did. The gentleman who did the, what's it called, the blue skin god, he also did it that way. Is it the more practical way to do it in case there are people who in the audience who want to go through this? Because I think there is a train also that has been envisaged that will do this.
Yes.
That's right.
There is a train. There is a train.
What happens is that in between, for example, if you look at the longest journey between Chitrakoot and Panchavati, and then from Hampi to Rameshwaram, nothing much happens on the way. Even in Valmiki Ramayana or in Kamba Ramayana, you talk about a lot of hyperbole about, crores of monkeys following and etc. from when they start the journey from Hampi to Rameshwaram. But nothing really is happening in between in terms of the events till they reach Rameshwaram, where they actually then Ram sits and then prays to the sea god and then decides how to build a bridge and all the stories which are there with Rameshwaram. So similarly, between Chitrakoot and Panchavati, there are a few places where some events do take place, the Lonar Lake or the Ramtek, and then reaching Panchavati. But there are far and few in between. So it was easier to just visit those places to get the sense of the story there, rather than the journey through the dangerous terrain of Chhattisgarh and the Naxalite area, where one would not have really got anything substantial to so to speak.
No, you might have got an experience of getting kidnapped, which would have been quite good for the book.
That is for the next book, Sanjeev. That's reserved for the next book. How authors wanted to be kidnapped and what happened thereafter.
Take one of your wives along and hope they get kidnapped.
I have just one thing to add to this, Sanjeev, which is that yes, if you wanted to do this whole trip as a tourist, you could start at one point and end at the other. But what was happening with us is that we were kind of going to one location, collecting stories, collecting facts, coming back, cross-checking them, indexing them, writing them down, and then moving on to the next destination. So in every month, we could travel 10 days and work on it 20 days, along with managing our day jobs.
Yeah, fair enough.
So
I mean, I understand.
Yeah.
I fully sympathize with that problem because I have, of course, my writing is not my primary profession, never been. I mean, I've been writing, always had another profession. So I sympathize with that problem greatly.
Yes.
So
absolutely.
Now comes the other issue. There are few things that I discovered by reading the book. By the way, I am one of those people who actually knows where Chitrakoot is. So my
You're
family
the
comes
100.
from
If you remember, we said 98. I was the 99th. You are the 100. So you know. That's fine.
Okay, but still, I did discover something which I didn't know, which is that the three of them spent most of the time in Chitrakoot and not in Panchavati. This is a complete discovery to me. Now, is this the case when you read the Valmiki Ramayana or
Yes.
Tulsi Ramayana, or is it the case that it's everywhere?
Valmiki, Tulsi, both of them. You will find the same thing. 11 saal, 11 mahine, 11 din. That is the specific thing which even Tulsidas says. So none of us knew it because we tend to treat the Ramayana more in terms of the stories rather than the time. चित्रकूट में ये हुआ फिर सीधा हम पंचवटी पहुंच गए मतलब for us the moment they leave Ayodhya they land up in Panchvati and Sita is taken away. It's not that way. There were many things which happening on the way and they spent a very peaceful 11 years 11 months 11 days in Chitrakoot. Very peacefully they lived there without much happening in terms of disturbance.
So the Surpanakha event happens where?
Nasik. That is why because her nose was cut. Nasika, yes. Nasika. Because the Nasika was cut, so it is Nasik.
So they spend a lot of time. So the moral of the story was you should have hung around in Chitrakoot and not carried off, gone off and causing trouble in Maharashtra.
That's what we also asked people. So it was all about his duty. It was all about his dharma. That his dharma was to ensure that the Dandakaranya is liberated from the demons that are living there. Because there is a story in the book which says that his ancestor Dandak had molested his guru's daughter, and the guru had therefore cursed that this entire Dandak forest would be called Dandakaranya, and nothing will grow here ever, and only demons and gowns will live here. But the upashap was that when Vishnu comes in as one of your descendants and steps into the place, he will destroy the demons and the forest will be a normal forest all over again. So when he came to know this, he had to go and, move through the Dandakaranya and liberate the area, so to say.
So this story of why he went there is there in the Valmiki Ramayana?
It is not there in the Valmiki Ramayana.
No.
It is not there in the Valmiki Ramayana. We had to really investigate this. It is in one of the subsidiary Ramayans. Raja Dandak ki kahani, I think Adhyatmik Ramayana mein hai shayad ye kahani.
Okay.
So all stories they move parallelly. I mean, suddenly you have one situation.
No, I understand.
The same thing is happening all over.
I'm trying to get a sense. So now you're going to all these places. So first of all, how many Ramayans did you all have to read through? And did you divide the job? So did one of you become the expert on Tulsi and the other on Valmiki, or the third, and somehow somebody, or did you all simultaneously, both of you read both?
Yes. Vikrant, your story for this one.
Yeah, so essentially the three which I read in great detail was Valmiki, Ramcharitmanas and Kamba Ramayana. Valmiki and Ramcharitmanas I could read the Hindi translations. Kamba Ramayana I read the English translation. And then over and above that, Neelesh had also referred to the Adhyatmik Ramayana, the Bhavat Ramayana by Eknath in Marathi.
Eknath, yes.
And I did not read Kritibas, or though there is an English translation of the Bengali version, or the Ranganath, the Gonagopal Reddy's Telugu Ramayana. In fact, it's very interesting, Sanjeev, that's the first place where you find mention of the Lakshman Rekha, which was somewhere around 1300 AD. But Tulsidas or Valmiki does not talk about it at all.
Just talk about it.
And Lakshman Rekha as a concept does not exist in Ramcharitmanas or Valmiki. And it was something which we really realized that this is a metaphor in our psyche now, but it's something which has been introduced much later in the 14th century. And even Ramcharitmanas, which is in the 16th century, doesn't talk about
doesn't mention it. Yes.
The Lakshman Rekha.
So you would have read descriptions of places in all of these, obviously locational descriptions. So did you find, first of all, to what extent did you find that the locations described fit with what you actually saw? So for example, when I went for example, to see Kishkinda, which is just across
Mm.
from Hampi, I was quite
Absolutely.
stunned with the similarity of the description of the landscape. Rocky landscape, lots of monkeys, that kind of landscape. By the way, there are sloth
Bears.
bear reserve next
God
door.
bless. Yes.
So I was
The Jambavan.
struck that somebody sitting in North India knew about this location. It's not a random location. So did you get that sense throughout
Yes.
that people
By and
who were
large,
writing this they sort of knew what they were talking about? That this is not mythological, entirely imaginary places. They had some idea what they were describing. Did you
yes,
get that
yes. Very,
sense?
very, very clearly, almost all through the trip. Almost all through the trip. We had a feeling that the places we were going to were authentic because we had read about them. But there is one discordance in Hampi, which is that all the mountains around Hampi were supposed to have sal trees. And when we went there, we found there were no trees like that. So it is said that Ram actually stood behind a sal tree and aimed at Wali. But when you go to Kishkindha, you find out that he actually stood on a ledge across the river and shot Wali from there. So those sal trees are missing. That is one discordance which we found, which was this thing. And some people have actually used that as a reason to say that Hampi is not actually Kishkinda. Kishkinda is north of the Vindhyas because of the kind of vegetation that is described. That vegetation does not match the vegetation. There is almost no vegetation in Hampi, as you would know. There are just rocks.
Yeah, it's
There
a
are just
very
rocks.
rocky place.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
so
So maybe
very
that is the
rocky
only
place.
place where we found a discordance. Otherwise, everywhere else, it was more or less like what we thought.
And is there a change in and like, for example, is it the case that the Valmiki Ramayana is more accurate to the place compared to the others, or it doesn't really? They're all more or less, or maybe knowledge about the subcontinent improved with time. So do you see that maybe the descriptions in later times improve, or is it the case that the southern Indian um, Ramayans are better at describing the southern sites vis-a-vis the? So do you see the time or location of the writer of that version of Ramayana? Does that improve or have any reflection on the description of the place in his version of the Ramayana? Does that happen?
Yours,
Uh,
Vikrant.
Not really. I mean, Sanjeev, if you look at Kamban, especially if you're from the south, it's a lot of exaggeration, which is, so we had to discount a lot. We were only looking at the stories which I took from Kamban. Even in Rameshwaram, there was a lot of confusion on where he actually first began his, so he went much up north and then came back to Rameshwaram to build a bridge to first to Dhanushkodi and from there Dhanushkodi to Sri Lanka, present day Sri Lanka now. And we don't find much of geographical descriptions there. So I think to answer your question, it's different in different places. I think Tulsi and Valmiki, you see more of the geographical description, while in Bhavarth or Eknath Ramayana, it is more focused on the story part, the journey of Ram rather than the description for the places.
In fact, I find the
yes.
yes, Neelesh, you're saying something.
I was saying that this is taking it ahead. That it's not just the physical descriptions, but yes, the emphasis has changed with every Ramayana. I mean, for Valmiki, Ram was a superhero. He was not God. He was God-like. But for Tulsidas, he was absolute God. So there are many events which have actually passed from one to the other, where the emphasis has changed. Small things. For instance, there is a place near Chitrakoot where one of the sons of Indra, as a crow, pecked at the
Jain.
breast of Sita and escaped, Jain. And then, of course, the story goes that he went right up to Indra's throne, hid under it, but a small piece of grass, Darbha stone thrown by Lakshman, chased him all throughout, and he had to come back and apologize. But when Tulsidas describes this, it is not pecking at the breast because Sita Maya is goddess. How can somebody peck at her breast? So the crow pecks at the foot of the Devi. So these emphases have changed.
Also, moral mores have changed because remember,
Exactly.
You in an earlier era, if you look at paintings in Ajanta and Ellora and so on, you will see women were bare-breasted and it was not a big deal. So
Absolutely.
When Valmiki was writing it, it would not have been a big deal. I mean, okay, a minor insult. By the time you are talking in the Islamic period, now you're 400-500 years into it by the time Tulsi is writing. And so already you have a parda system. So pecking at the breast is a very big deal by this point. So some of that has also been probably the case. So
yes,
now,
that's what I think, that the sociological changes have actually impacted the way it has been looked at. The core remains the same, but the descriptions change based on the sociological realities of that time.
So now let me say that you, through the course of the book, make certain interesting observations. So let me bring out a few of them, and then so you go to Sri Lanka, and you say that most of the temples in Sri Lanka house prominent Buddhist pilgrimage sites, like for example the Murugan temple in Kataragama is well known for Buddhist. So this is quite an interesting point that I have also found. If you go to Hindu temples in Sri Lanka, you'll find Buddhist sites, and you go to Buddhist sites, like for example the temple of the tooth in Kandy, it's full of Hindu temples. So, this idea that we have had, which is a relatively modern idea of Hinduism and Buddhism as being somewhat separate, is totally not true when you go to a properly Buddhist country, which has always, for long periods has been Buddhist. You will find that it is extremely mixed up. But what is the reception that you found to the Ramayana? Are Sri Lankans, how do Sri Lankans view this story? Is Rama somebody who invaded them, or how do they think about Ram?
So a few points, Sanjeev. So first of all, we met a lot of Hindu worshippers who obviously are worshipping Ram, but at the same time, you do find that Ravan is not seen in a negative light as a villain, but more of someone who was a ruler of Lanka and somebody who did commit an act which required Ram to come and invade Sri Lanka and take back his wife, but is not seen in a negative light the way probably one might view it in India. Of course, we were also little handicapped by the fact that most of the Hindu temples have been kind of captured by the Buddhist, the very strong Buddhist dominance in Sri Lanka. In many temples, even the actual sanctum sanctorum is covered by a screen, and you can only see an image which is shown on the screen. You can't actually worship the idol, which probably is still behind the screen. So to that extent, there is a lot of over the last 150, 200 years, dominance by the Buddhists have seen that the Hindu practitioners have kind of become very subdued. Though many of the temples are still, the Koneshwaram temple where Ravan, you can see the way he had cut the rock. Many of these temples you still find worship taking place, but it is not as prominent as or as loud as one would see it in India.
So it may come as some. So did you guys visit? Ravan is really a Noida rage boy. I hope you all know this.
We know it. We pointed this out. Yes, Sector 56, Noida.
Ridiculous. You have this ridiculous adoption of Ravan by Dravidianists as some southern leader, but in fact he was right here from Noida, and in fact he conquered Lanka from his half brother
Kuber.
Yes.
And so he suddenly becomes a South Indian hero. It's quite absurd.
Absolutely.
Even otherwise, he's Mandodari, his wife, is either from Mandor in Jodhpur or she's from Meerut. So both of them, the husband and wife, are actually Delhi, Noida, Meerut, in that NCR region.
And his
they are an NCR.
His territory extended up to Dandakaranya, almost up to Panchavati. So he ruled over a much larger piece of land compared to the Ishwaku dynasty.
Also, we found another very interesting thing which was told to us, that Ravan was the lord of the three worlds. The three worlds is like Akash, Patal, and Prithvi type. But what they said was that time the concept probably was anything north of the Himalayas is Swargalok. Between Lanka and up to Lanka is Prithvilok, and anything below Lanka is Patal Lok. So they said these were the three worlds. It actually practically means that he ruled the whole world, not the whole universe. That's one. And another interesting thing that we discovered about Ravan there was, which is that this thing about Ravan having 10 heads. So there are many descriptions, many interpretations to that. But what we were told by one of the worshippers in the Gayatriya temple near the Sita Elia temple was that he actually ruled over 10 provinces. And when he sat on his throne, he wore one crown, and there were 9 other crowns placed behind him like this. So when people went into his court, it seemed as if there are 10 heads, whereas they actually represented the 10 provinces that he governed. His administration was so properly maintained that he had distributed the whole India into provinces, and he used to control through a regular system which was built into it. So these were things which were told to us by people in Sri Lanka.
So you end your book, by the way, by saying that you quote Mahant Gyandas and you say, I do not know how many places you will cover. I also do not know whether you'll be able to capture the essence of the Lord with your writing. But I do know one thing. So the journey will change you. So how did this journey change each of you?
Vikrant first.
To me, Sanjeev, it was an amazing discovery that, the question a lot of people in the Indic, community ask about proof, archaeological proof, trying to find the birth of the birth date using some nakshatra, some constellation calculations, and so on and so forth. I think to me, what was very clear was that across a very large span of geography from Ayodhya till Sri Lanka, there is a constant belief or faith which is undeniable, which is unshakable. More than that, we met some remarkable people along the way who have devoted their entire life. Just, in Chitrakoot, for example, there are temples where for 40, 50 years, 24 by 7, the Manas part is going on. Somebody or other, 2 hours, 3 hours, 7 hours, he just comes, does the Manas part and goes away. It has been going on continuously. You meet people who are dedicated. We met one person from the IT department in Delhi who has traveled this entire journey by foot. In Chitrakoot, he was in the Naxalite areas used to be captured by these Naxalites, and they used to find out that he's one simple guy looking for some Ram temple. They used to help him. So what really kind of made me humble was the fact that there is so much of belief which people have, which transcends any, there's no need for any proof or whatsoever of that kind. So I think that to me was really a humbling experience.
Neelesh?
Yes, it's all about people, the people that we met. We met some very remarkable people. I'll give you just one example of Hampi, where there is the Anjaneya Parvat, where Lord Hanuman was born. Now, when we went in to look for the pujari there, for the person who was doing the Panditji there, we expected to find somebody in a dhoti and coming. But when we went there, we found a corporate-looking guy sitting there doing the puja. So we asked him, I said, I joked and I said, Swamiji, you are looking like a corporate. He says, I was a corporate till a year back. I am an MBA from IIM Bangalore. And I had a startup. And I sold that startup, and the Lord called me and I came here. And he lives in a 2-room apartment at the base of that Parvat. And he says that the garage in Bangalore was much larger than the house that I stay in now. But I was unhappy there. I'm happy here. So I asked him a question. I said, all of us in the corporate world are so insecure, fighting for place. What will happen to me tomorrow? What's going to happen next? So don't you get scared like this? So his answer was very revealing. It is something that really, hit me here. He said, I didn't come here. The Lord sent me. It is his job to look after me. It's not mine. So that's something I take away from the entire journey. That if the Lord has put us on a particular path and the Lord has given us something to do, it is his job to look after us. If you leave things to him, things will happen. And this was repeated. I could give you 7 people on the journey, each of whom said exactly the same thing. I am doing the Lord's work. The Lord will look after me. I have faith in Him. I don't have to worry. And they were so much at peace. And here we are struggling for small little things. So that experience of meeting these people with rock solid faith has changed me. I think my faith quotient has gone up substantially. So that's a major lifestyle change or major thought process change that has happened.
So you already tasted blood with this. So the question that is obvious is, are you planning another trip somewhere?
Absolutely,
Yes.
Sanjeev. There in India, there are some. So the reason we chose Ramayana vis-a-vis Mahabharata, also one of the reasons was the fact that one, it is chronological, unlike Mahabharata, where multiple events are happening at the same time. Krishna is doing his own stuff in Mathura and Dwarka, while in Ramayana there is a chronological sequence in which it happens, and it's also a geographical sequence of going from one place to another as the story unfolds. So that really was it lends itself to writing in a much kind of a singular fashion. There are some amazing journeys in India which people have been doing for centuries, and that's going to be our next trip, where we circumambulate a river. I don't want to talk much about it because we'll come out with that book soon. But there are these amazing stories people have been doing for centuries, from Bengal, from Madhya Pradesh, from Maharashtra, Gujarat. Unfortunately, the English reader is not aware of that, and unfortunately in 2020 we couldn't do that because of the pandemic. But we're going to start that in Diwali, and that's going to be our next journey, as well as hopefully next beautiful book, which will be a combination of mythology, travel, and also a lot of historical narratives in it.
Maps,
Maps for sure. Maps for sure. We are taking the takeaway from today's thing is maps. Yes, and we are going to tell them with full authority that no permissions are required. You can take any map that you want.
No permission required. None.
Absolutely. We are going to take that home today, and I'm going to play this recording to my publisher and show him that this is what the guy says, and he knows what he's talking about.
We have, I think, got more than 150 to 200, feedback on the book saying, "Where's the map?" So it's absolutely. We're looking at that.
But Sanjeev, I have one thing to add to what Vikrant has said, which is that yes, we are coming back with similar travelogues involving Indian mythology in the days to come. At least 2 of them are planned in the next 1.5 year. But we are not sticking to that genre alone. We are doing books on other subjects also. So the next book that is going to come out is going to be totally different. Nothing to do with mythology, nothing to do with travel. It's a completely different.
Give us some hints. Give us some hints.
Okay. What do we do?
I can talk about the book which you're coming out with, Sanjeev. You want about the hint about the travel or the other book?
The other book. Okay. The other book is a book on radio.
Whatever you want to tell. I mean, I don't want to mess up your sort of surprise quotient when you think.
No, but we are doing a book on radio. Let me tell you. Radio. That's the hint. We are doing a book on radio. It's going to be a nostalgia-inducing kind of book about. Yes, something like that. So that's about as far as we go on a public forum. The moment we go off screen, we'll tell you what it's all about.
The circumambulation of a river is again.
That's the hint.
Yes. No, but have you already done this thing, or are you going to start in November or something?
That's right.
The second book we are writing now. We are writing the book on radio is now being written. It's in the process. We've done half of it. The rest half of it coming up. But because of travel restrictions, we were not doing this river thing. We'll be doing that in October, and I think we'll start sometime in November, December. So the book should be out next year, 2022.
I can talk about one book, Sanjeev, which is close to you as a professional, and which Amazon Westland is going to publish in the next couple of months. Is a fascinating story of the history of the State Bank of India, starting from 1806 as Bank of Calcutta, and I am capturing 220 years of history. Thanks to people like Professor Amya Kumar Bakchi and Abhik Rai, who have written extensively on the bank. And my idea is to come out with a book which is very readable, very enjoyable for a layman, not necessarily somebody who comes from a finance background. So that's a book which I'm really looking forward to in the next couple of months to come out, and I'll be sending you a copy very soon.
Yeah, I'll be fascinating because, Reserve Bank of India started out as basically a department of State Bank of India. And for a very, very long time, the State Bank of India did many functions that were, central bank-like. Even today, there are a few things. You'll occasionally come out find an odd thing which, why is State Bank doing it? Because it's some legacy thing that the State Bank still does in its role as a central bank. So I'll actually look forward to that. And I, of course, like books like that. There's a great book, by the way, by Rahul Bajoria on the history of the Reserve Bank of India. I don't know if you have ever read it.
Yeah.
But it's he's written it so nicely. And it's fun because at least in the later chapters, I know many of those characters. And even when I don't know many of the characters, it's quite fun because many of those debates are still living debates. They may have happened 60 years ago, but those debates, arguments still happen.
That's right.
So I'll be quite interested in reading that in the context of State Bank of India, because I'm sure something that was debated in 1906 is probably still being debated today.
1806 as well. Yeah. And when you visit Calcutta, you should visit the SBI Museum on One Strand Road, which is a fascinating museum. It's as good as a Western, museum, like a Van Gogh museum in Amsterdam. It's beautifully done.
Is it?
Yeah, it is that good. It is that good. And the local head office on One Strand Road, Bibadi Bagh, is where you should visit that museum. It's absolutely wonderful.
Oh, I've learned something. Now,
and if you actually go by Sanjeev, if you go by the number of ideas that we throw at each other every week, then we should be having something like 356 books by the end of 2022. Every day we get up in the morning and say, "Arey, ye kitab karni hai, haan yaar, ye wali zarur karenge." You go on from there, and you start looking at it, and then say, "Acha, isko agle saal dekhenge yaar abhi." I mean, so many new things keep coming up, and if you are actually keep your eyes and ears open, there's a world out there where things are happening which people don't know about. I mean,
Sanjeev,
we're also doing a book on the freedom struggle, and whoever I have told this particular story about the freedom struggle to, have said, "Humko ye pata hi nahi tha." I mean, 95 out of 100 people have said, "Humko nahi malum tha kaisa hua." So there are endless possibilities for books, as you
from one of your lectures, Sanjeev, I picked up a story on the history of the Marathas, because you mentioned that the very few people really know that they kind of believe that the Mughal Empire ended and then the British Empire came in, and there's a lot of things happening between the third battle of Panipat till almost 1810 or 1818. When Maharaja Shinde signed the Treaty of Salbai. So I have done a very extensive study on the history of the Marathas, though it's not coming out of the book, but as an audio book by Storytel, where I'm covering from Shivaji till 1857, and hoping that a lot of people come to know about the real history of how, especially post the Battle of Panipat. A lot of people know Bajirao and all that, but not beyond Panipat, talking about Madharaj Peshwa, Nanasaheb Peshwa, Maharaja Shinde. A lot of that has been covered. So it was an idea which I picked up from one of your chats. I don't remember where you spoke, but where you mentioned very that the history of the Marathas is not really known to people.
I know. I'm so glad that you're doing this, and in fact, recently there's been a bit of a resurgence of interest in it, thanks to Neelesh Kulkarni and a couple of others.
Yes.
So I haven't read his books recently, but I am right now immersed in one, of course, trying to drag this economy out and get it back on rails. But I have been slowly but steadily for almost 5-6 years researching a book on the history of the revolutionary movement. And I've probably got piles of books around me. I mean, I've got literally books and books and books on, you can see how many books just lying on my table just now on Bhagat Singh and Chandrasekhar Azad and such like. So I'm slowly making my way through it and typing away. I obviously, because of my other job, I have progressed slowly. But I've enjoyed myself. I just went just a few days ago to the house of Basanta Biswas. He was the chap who threw a bomb on Lord Hardinge in 1912 in Chandni Chowk. So I visited his house just one weekend ago. So so on the 15th of August, I visited his house. And he was born in a remote village in Nadia. And his house is still there. It's in very bad shape. But it is interesting that house was built actually by his grandfather, Digambar Biswas, who was an even more interesting character. As He was the guy who started the Indigo Revolt of 1859. And
Right.
so that house is still there. It's crumbling. And of course, Vasanta Biswas was also from that family. And so I went there. A branch of the Biswas family still lives there, although they're very poor. But obviously, great pride in that history. So I really enjoyed going there. But why I'm mentioning this in this context is that I find that this idea of actually visiting the sites that you write about
Yes. Yes.
makes a
Absolutely.
huge difference.
Huge difference. Yes, yes,
Absolutely.
absolutely.
And I
Absolutely.
think people who just sit in the library and write about things miss the point completely. As I'm reading, since I'm now reading a lot about the revolutionaries and much of what is said about them, I mean, forget, um, I mean, there is a lot of misconceptions about them because of ideological and other reasons. But the sheer facts of them are sometimes wrong.
Yes.
Because
Yes.
see, you say that such and such event happened and he was going down the road and he turned left and something happened there. And if you haven't gone there and walked down and turned left, it makes no sense. When
Correct.
you turn left,
Yes.
you see what he's talking about, and it's completely
Yes.
different from what and scholars are writing about it. They are referencing. So over time, huge story has been built on utter nonsense. So did you have that kind of experience sometimes while doing the Ramayana?
Yeah, I mean, we were very clear
Fair
that
number.
we
Yes.
wanted to write whatever we have experienced ourselves, and the stories which are not popularly mentioned in Valmiki or the Ramcharitmanas, so that those are the stories we want to get people to really understand. So we would talk to 10 people, 9 would tell the usual humdrum stuff, but one of them would come up with something which was very interesting. So it was a very serendipitous and kind of a stumbling along the way, but that's what really made our entire experience wonderful, and that's what a lot of readers are saying, that they like the
Hmm.
fact that it's a very personal story from our own experiences. Yes, Nilesh.
English,
And
you
another thing was that we always read after we had traveled. That was a conscious decision that we would like to go to the places with an open mind, take a look around, just absorb the whole thing, then come back and read and try to validate. It didn't work the other way around, because had we first read and identified the story, we wouldn't have gone with an open mind. So we went with a totally open mind. We want to just check out these places, and we'll go there and stand there and look at them, and then
Yes.
come back and try to index them or cross index them, or validate them. So that's why we went with an open mind, and everywhere we went with an open mind, we always found new things happening. When we came back, we realized कि हमने तो ये देखा है, लेकिन ये यहाँ तो लिखा ही नहीं है कहीं पे. So that feeling
so
came in very strongly in many
so
places.
I think we are running out of time. We have 10 minutes left. I think it's a good idea to get some questions in from the audience. So can I ask the KLF organizers what are the things they can do? Meanwhile,
Yes, I think.
let me again recommend this book. It's a great book. It's called In the Footsteps of Rama, published by HarperCollins. It costs $5.99. It's a steal. I'm sure it's on Amazon and all the main platforms. So get out there and pick up a copy for yourself. So over to the organizers, if you can put some questions through to
I
the
can see some
authors.
questions. Do you think that this book will be helpful for readers who had never gone through the original text? Oh, absolutely. I mean, the whole idea of our writing was that not just the story of Ramayana, which is a very basic story we have written in the introduction, but really a lot of interesting nuggets which people don't know. So yes, it's not a substitute at all for Ramcharitmanas or Valmiki. That's a very comprehensive and a scholarly work done, like in case of Valmiki, thousands of years back, and Tulsi 600-700 years back. But surely this book will give you something very interesting. So that's the question from Navjoti Roy.
And I think, Navjoti, what we really wanted to do was, when you read the book, we wanted to kindle a kind of interest in your mind. I want to go and see this place.
Absolutely.
Because we would like you to go there and experience what we experienced, so that you carry away more of the Ramayana with you, rather than what you would do if you were actually to just read a text. So the idea was to give you a kind of interest, give you a kind of window through which you look at these places, and you really want to get there. That was the object of the book. And that I think, by and large, amongst a fair number of people we have talked to, it has worked. People do want to go there and check it out. Thank you very much, Vandana Kulkarni Paranjpe, for saying it's a great book. Thank you. Thank you very much for calling it a very interesting book.
Ravan from NCR, Noida. Yes.
Yes, absolutely. For that matter, in one of the interviews, I was told that it is no surprise that Ravan is from North India. He says he is rightfully from Delhi. So I laughed at him and said, I am a committed Delhiite. I won't take that. I take that as a major insult. There's no way I'm going to accept it. All kinds of people live in all kinds of places.
Well, Delhiites will happily blame it on Noida. Because that's actually where he's from.
Thank you very much, Sukhjinder. So nice of you. Hey, much as we appreciate that, thank you very much, Sheeni. Well, we'd rather take questions. Ask us something.
Aman is asking a question. So
we are not telling you. We are not telling you.
I think I said quite a bit, so I'll leave it at that.
I think you more or less let it out.
You want to answer that, Neelesh? Aman is asking that, is it to tell his
So it's a question about itihasa and the meaning of the word itihasa.
Yes, it is. See, if you go over the Hindu texts, there are the Vedas, there are the Puranas, there are Upanishads, there are the Shrutis, there are the Brahmans, but it is only the Ramayana and the Mahabharata which are referred to as itihasas. Itihas, as it happened. So this is history. This is something that has happened. Maybe all of it is not history, because when something travels with an oral tradition across such a vast country, things get added to it. So maybe there is an element of mythology in the exaggeration that goes into the telling of the story. But the basic story, yes, such a prince existed, these events took place, and this is a way of telling people. But I think telling of any story ultimately has the background intent of teaching people something.
Yes,
so this
Neelesh,
could be a way in which the writers wanted people to be aware of what is dharma and why Swadharma should be followed at all costs. So yes, not just telling the story, but the fact that it would make people aware of what their dharma was.
Today in schools, history is being taught in a much more interesting fashion that probably Sanjeev or Neelesh, when we were in school and it was more by rote and learning about dates and remembering events. I think today teachers are making it much more interesting in a storytelling format. So we don't claim ourselves to be historians really. I mean, it was more of an experiential journey which we went through. So that was our purpose. Second edition with maps and insights. Yes, Ved. Yes, we are looking at not with photographs, but with a map or at least a bookmark kind of along with the book, so that there is I tweeted a map, which a very basic map, which was the route we followed, Sanjeev. But yes, that's something we need to really look at the edition, which should be coming out very quickly. No photographs,
honestly,
because we believe that what should tell the story and not the photographs.
And not more insights, because if we actually started looking at all the things that we have written and studying those texts all over again, we'll come up with a totally different book. It won't be insights. It will be another book altogether with the same journey. That's the way
is asking, was China Swarglok?
This is. I'm not competent to answer that one. I would prefer not to be competent to answer that one.
Well, it would have been Tibet. The point that the history that you're talking about.
It's a theory. It's a theory that was put forward, and they said that look, all gods are fair. That is because all the people north of the Himalayas would be fair. That's how it was looked at.
I think we are running out of time. I think we are running out of time. So with that, let me hand it back to the organizers for any closing remarks and other things.
Thanks, Sanjeev. It's been great chatting with you.
It was a pleasure. It was good fun. And, it was a casual chat. So I hope the listeners also had some fun as much as we did.
I have your book, and it has got your signature as well. So
lovely.
Yes.
Lovely, lovely. So maybe you can write another book about visiting those places and how they actually look in your style.
Okay. Yeah, that's
One more idea.
That makes it 5:37. It's back to you,
So
Rashmi.
organizers, over to you for closing the event, since we have exactly 2 minutes left. I think the organizers have they're hunting for questions to post. So anyway, why don't I do the honors? There is no closing. So basically, thank you everyone for taking time off on a Monday evening for this, and we'll. I'm sure there'll be many more books to chat about. From what I can gather, that we will be. I think every few months I'll have to do this. With that. Thank you again. Thanks, Neelesh. Thanks, Vikrant. And all the best for all your adventures and books in the future. So, once again, just to end it, this is the book. It's called In the Footsteps of Rama. And it's a great book. As you saw, many of the readers have already commented that it's an absolutely fun book. And like them, I hope that many of you will visit these places. So, thank you and a very good evening. Good evening. Namaskar.
Good evening. Namaskar.
Thank you very much. Namaskar.